Thank you guys. Thank you for a lovely sharing. You know, it was really powerful week. I myself was really blessed because then it was a time for us to just to come back and ask God and just to listen to God and God's voice. I was seeing the same picture and I was thinking about something, but then I was amazed to see a very simple man could see the same picture and see very different pictures, right? So come up with God. God was just revealing him something that was really powerful. And he was just saying one thing that really struck out to me was that when Bajuna was helping us to hear God's voice, he had laid out this picture of Snow Mountain. A guy camping out there, and it was a solitary place, quiet place. And I was looking at it, and I was just thinking about nothing, right? So just camping and things like that, quiet time or quiet solitary. The guy just there was his brother who, elderly brother. He could hear God saying that there are people like I'm like you know, God saying that was reminding me that about the cold heart. When I saw that picture, I could see the cold heart in my own life. That's what he was. That's what he was sharing and saying. And when he said that, actually he was confessing for himself, but then it was like, you know, even for all of us, especially for me as well. Sometimes we get cold heart and hard heart, right? Because we know so much that we don't get to the simple things, and we don't get to see what God is sharing with us. So that was one of the things that I got to know, and it was really beautiful experience. Also, I wanted to highlight maybe like these are the beginning of how God is moving into our lives. In November first week, we're gonna have a time for baptism. Okay, so we're gonna have time for baptism, and one of our purpose was to have this DTS program was to disciple our young people, disciple new families, people that are coming to the church, but also to lay out a bridge to help them understand the gospel, the meaning of God having in their life. So, but also toward preparing them toward baptism as well. So water baptism in November. So if any one of you would like to be baptized, and because it's a time that where you will not only be confirmed physically that you are the son of, you're the daughter of God, but it's also a spiritual event. Something happens when you take the baptism of water. So something happens, this spiritual thing happens. So you know, it will be an awesome time for us to be confirmed and also to witness God, right? So please be praying for your brothers and sisters, and also encourage them, remind them, and personally, some of you guys also need to maybe like you want to take baptism, and you can prepare toward that event in the month of November, first week. Okay, so you might want to pray toward that time. Just two things I wanted to highlight. Even as I want to tie onto our testimonies, even as we are reading the book of Mark, the two things are, is there a stop here? All right. About a disciple. I know like you guys have been catching up with the reading of Mark, right? Yes! 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 Right? Yes. Sorry. Okay. It has been powerful and interesting study, right? I've never had people just come up, you know, with so many questions, because they are like asking questions, they are reading, and they can't just wait to read the following chapter. And they're reading ahead of time, all right? They're reading in advance. And the youth forum or WhatsApp just going viral, and just like people are asking questions like, Bajuna can't even sleep. He just posts those, you know, like the small cards even at 5 a.m. in the morning. And I can see that. Oh, Christ is walking in the water. What? What? Who's walking in the water? I don't know. So, we are really excited. What I mean to say is that we are excited and we're reading. And thank you for reading. And God is not saying thank you for reading my word, but you will thank God for what He will do through those words, okay? But two things really comes up to us, even as we were talking about disciples, being disciples, and following Christ. Until this point, Christ, as being the Son of God, has done so many things to prove that He is the Son of God, right? So He has raised the dead, He has fed thousands, multiple times. He has shown that He is the Messiah, walked on the water. He came to His disciples, and He has healed in several occasions.
Amen.
He has been driving out demons. This man is walking in the village, in the towns, in the countryside, and literally like creating this havoc, right? This sensation. Like, this man is no more a simple man. He's not only a prophet, but this man is something. This man is something. Mark is trying to show that this man has power, and he is the God. He is the Son of God. And the unfortunate thing is that even though how many miracles Christ was able to do before His disciples and people, but yet people were not being able to get Him. People were not being able to understand who this man is, actually. And now, finally, in these chapters, like chapter 10, chapter 9, and chapter 10, Christ reveals the purpose of His coming on earth. He reveals to them that who this Messiah is for them, right? Why He has come to them. The purpose of Him coming to the earth. And if you read in these verses, like, you will see that Christ, third time, revealing His death. He will be handed to the people, and then the people will take Him to the cross, and He will be killed, and He will be raised again. He will be rise again from the dead. Why? To redeem, to save humanity from their sinfulness. That's what we're going to read. If you read chapter 10, verse 43, 45, you will see a glimpse of what Christ is going to do. Verse 45, it says, "For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give His life a ransom for many." So Christ was actually laying out the foundation for His disciples. And today I want to talk about why it was important for Him to tell His disciples the meaning of the purpose of Him coming on earth. I wanted to tie on to like discipleship training school, because now we are not only the follower of Christ, right? But we have become disciples of Christ. How many of you are disciples of Christ? Can you raise your hand, please? How many of you are disciples of Christ? Right? We not only like believe, but we have believed in our hearts, and we are following Him. Right? And now Christ is as if Christ is separating His disciples unto Himself and saying, "Hey, if you are my disciples, if you are my friends, if you are following what I'm telling you, what I'm asking you to follow, now these are the things that you need to do. These are the essential things for the disciples." In other words, the cost of disciples He shows to them. What would it entail, or how much would it cost for a disciple when he follows Jesus Christ? So the first thing that He shows, he's again and again, he's telling to His disciples is this: humility. As being the disciples of Jesus Christ, Christ now reminding them about the greatest essence or the quality that the disciples need to have. The quality of being humble before God, to walk humbly before God and humbly follow Jesus Christ, His footsteps. Jesus says that deny yourself and follow me. All right? Deny yourself and follow me. How hard it is to deny ourselves and follow Him. Is it easy? It's hard. Now Christ, in light of what He would do on the cross, He is revealing Himself to them, but at the same time, as He's revealing the truth of Him coming on earth, He is asking His disciples for the ultimate cost of being a disciples of Him. And I think that is one of the things that maybe Christ wants us to be reminded today, that we are His disciples. And He wants us to walk not in pride, but in humility. We can be disciples if we humble ourselves and we decide to follow Jesus Christ. But in humility, the humility entails, humility has more things. You know, it has simple things, but at the same time it has complex things as well. Right? So the first thing that I want to talk about is that humility. What would it mean for you to humble yourself before God? And what would it mean for you to humbly follow Christ in your life today? What would it mean for you to humble yourself? Anyone who wants to be first must be the very last and be the servant of all. Mark 9:35. But it is not so among you, but whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give His life ransom for many. Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 to 11 lays out how Christ actually models Himself, how Christ actually, in humility, He gives up His life for the humanity, for all of us, for you and I, and He models the humility for us, for all of us. And so that because He has modeled for us, because He has shown us what humility looks like, now I believe that Christ saying humility, He is now challenging His disciples when they are trying to be on top or first. He's asking them to have the servant-like character in them. And I think one thing that I want to talk about is that many times when we struggle thinking that when we have become Christians, things will go smoothly, right? Or when I pray, God will bless me. Or when I serve, I will be praised. We don't really think that way, but then indirectly we want people to appreciate us, right? What we do. When we follow Jesus Christ, we expect something in return. Just like the disciples, they were following Christ, and perhaps they were expecting Jesus to put them in a very good place. In a place where they would be respected or dignified. Of course, God and Jesus had that place for them. But then, onto the road of the cross, or on to become His disciples, now Christ almost surprises them with this very surprising expectations that He lays out to His disciples. That if you want to be the first, you have to be servant of all. And if you want to be my disciples, in other words, then you need to serve. In this competitive driven world, what would it mean for us to strive for nothing. What would it mean for us to fail? We are striving for failing, right? We don't do that. We strive. We want to do better, to succeed, to step onto the ladder, right? That takes us up there, and we compete with each other. We want to see ourselves on that place where we can just like receive what we want to receive, where we can enjoy our lives, right? And I think similarly, when disciples saw Christ, they obviously saw hope in him, and they wanted to be those disciples that would probably wanted to enjoy the privilege that Christ would grant to them. But then Christ is asking them to humble themselves in a ways that they are to become the servants of all. What would it mean for us to be today as being Christians, to be the servants of all? What would it mean for us in our workplace, in our schools, in our ministries, to represent ourselves, to present ourselves as being the servants of Christ? That road has costs. That road takes us to the suffering. To be his disciples and walk in humility is not easy. It requires us our patience. It requires us to pay the price. Maybe perhaps like God wants us to overcome our pride, as some of you guys were sharing. And I believe that God was asking his disciples to lay down their rights and come before him as the way they were. And especially, he was hinting them that this road has suffering and costs and price. I want to encourage you guys, as some of you guys have now come out of DTS training program, there is huge amount of blessing. There are a huge amount of blessings that God has for you. But at the same time, there will be, when you walk on the road of humility, there will be suffering and there will be cost that you will be paying time and time again and again. Mark 8:34. Let's read it together. Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." What is your cross today? Okay? What is your cross? It shows your suffering. It shows your price that you would pay in order for you to become his disciples. When you become his disciples, that it's your cross that has suffering that you will bear because you call and you consider yourselves as being the servant of God. And I want you to think about what are your sufferings, or what is your cross today that you are bearing, that you are carrying on your shoulder. The road of the cross, being a disciple, it is not easy. There are challenges, there are sufferings, there are things that we need to do from our part, and it requires us to come before God and to carry those crosses and declare that we are his disciples still. In Romans 5, chapter 5, verses 3 to 5, it says, "And not only that, but we also boast in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not disappoint us, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit that has been given to us." Paul reminded his church that, in the cross there is suffering, right? And then, but then this suffering actually produces perseverance. Okay, and the perseverance produces what? Perseverance produces what? Character, right? Okay, let's do this. Suffering produces endurance. And endurance produces what? Character. And character produces hope. Do you understand this concept? Right? When we call ourselves as his disciples, when we become his disciples, then we have trials and we have things going on in our lives which may not be easy in our lives. When we're carrying the cross, and those things, those problems may occur, may become our suffering. And sometimes we are so quick to say like, I didn't sign up for this one, right? So I prayed for God just, breakthrough, God just bring, like heal me, or God would just show me a new way, right? But then when we become Christians, especially in our community, like when we go around and share the gospel and they become Christians, and then we have heard oftentimes they say like, before I was a Christian, I didn't have all these problems. Now I have become Christians. My problems have multiplied over for multiple fold, right? So they have multiplied in my life. And there are so many problems right now, more than before. Sometimes it seems that when we follow Jesus Christ, when we become his disciples, there are problems, the things that we need to go through. We face those things, and in amidst of those things, we think that where God is and where and how, and I didn't really sign up for this thing, right? But then, amidst of suffering, we are reminded that God, when we go through those sufferings, it produces a type of character, and that character produces hope in us, the hope that will not disappoint us, in a ways that we endure Christ, we believe in God, not because what I see things, not because when I see things happen in my life, right? When I see things, when I believe in God, only when God is there in my life. But I choose to worship him even I don't see things happening in my life. So it produces character in you, within you, that becomes a similar character with the Lord, the character of Jesus Christ. That you will begin to suffer for him because he has suffered for you. And the way Jesus Christ hoped, what was the hope? Jesus Christ knew that God would raise him from the dead. And in that hope will become our hope. That we are not suffering just for nothing, right? But God will redeem the suffering. God will redeem all the hardships and problems that we are facing and going through for his glory and for his glory and for his work. All right, I'm going to keep that in there. Can we just pray? And there's two things I want to ask. Even as we pray right now, let us just pray. Be praying for two things. That the first thing is humility. The second thing is enduring through suffering. I know this is some of you guys. It may not be familiar, or it may not be so deep thing for some of you guys when we talk about suffering. But literally, some of you guys, those who come from Hindu background, they go through suffering right after they believe in Jesus Christ. Physical suffering as well, right? They're persecuted from their families, and some of our people are still being persecuted because of they have changed their faith and things like that. But you may relate your suffering to something else in your life. Those things that you are sacrificing because of God, and it may seem at some point like hard and harsh for you. But then today, just go to your friend, maybe like pair up, maybe one or two people together, and just want to just share your suffering. What are you going through right now? And pray for those things that you might be struggling in your lives right now. Okay? Can you just do that, please? Okay, pair up, and then just want to share what you're going through right now, and pray for those things. तपाईले पेयर गर्नुहोस् अनि कसैको लागि प्रार्थना गरिदिनुहोस्, हुन्छ?